The word we've heard a lot of from our various guests here on BBC World News, talking to us out of the States, Steve, has been closure, or to define it more specifically, how the events in Pakistan will not provide closure. Perfectly understandable, of course. If it doesn't go as far as closure, how far does it go?
My suspicion is that everybody who is involved in that, and the people who are watching were involved in it, will take those events in Pakistan in a very, very different way. That word closure is a very, very difficult word for people who lost relatives. Clearly, I imagine there is no closure. But for somebody like me, and I don't think I suffered unduly, I was very, very lucky there. There was certainly a significance to the death of Osama Bin Laden, because a lot of people involved on that day felt as though he was after them. And there was a sense in the city of New York immediately after the thing that something very personal had happened, that this wasn't a visitation by some obscure force, but that it was a very personal attack by an individual and people around an individual on individuals within New York and the city itself, if you like. There is a feeling in that city that the city has a personality, almost that it is a person. And there was a sense immediately after September the 11th that your friend, that a person had been attacked by somebody else. So in that sense, I think that word closure might apply. But clearly, there were all kinds of griefs and tragedies there, and nothing that happened in that compound in Pakistan will undo that for those people.
The events of 9/11, Steve, the events of the past 3 or 4 days, compare and contrast for me the George W. Bush administration. Perhaps they used the wrong language at the time of 9/11, perhaps understandably so, because it was such a massive event, it was such a difficult thing to get right. But watching Barack Obama now on these pictures at Ground Zero, not a hint of triumphalism, not a hint of celebration, very respectful, very calm.
Yeah, but there is just short of 10 years between the events. I don't think anybody thought that at the time President Bush struck the wrong tone. In fact, I think there's a sense that he struck absolutely the right tone for that city at that time when he grabbed that bullhorn in the smouldering wreck of the Twin Towers and basically said, "We're coming after you." Maybe there's a different interpretation in different parts of the world. I think in America, certainly, there was a sense this is a personal attack on America and on American values, and we're coming after you. And I don't think that tone jarred one bit, certainly with Americans, and I imagine with a lot of people outside America at that time, certainly in Europe. I mean, in the Islamic world it may have been very, very different. But certainly in America, I think President Bush struck absolutely the tone that resonated with his people. Now, President Obama's tone is clearly very, very different, but he's a different sort of president. And his stance is one of quiet resolution, exuding determination. But remember, he made those decisions that led to that death. There was no softness there. There may be softness in his language, but there's no apparent softness in the way in which he behaved.
Now, back to Pakistan, where senior security officials have launched an inquiry into what's been described as the failure of their intelligence services to locate Osama bin Laden. Pakistani military leaders have also complained that the Americans shared no information with them before attacking and killing the al-Qaeda leader at his compound in Abbottabad. From there, here's our correspondent, Ola Guerin.
Sealed off and silent, Bin Laden's compound, long a place of secrets. But more details are emerging from one of his wives, now in Pakistani custody. She's alleged to have told interrogators that Bin Laden hadn't left his room here for the past 5 years. Much of what happened during the raid which killed him is still unknown, but the United Nations is now pressing America for all the facts so the legality can be checked. And the Archbishop of Canterbury, Rowan Williams, has said the killing of an unarmed man is always going to leave a very uncomfortable feeling. But he said Bin Laden was manifestly a war criminal. Pakistan has now ordered an inquiry into the failure of its intelligence services to capture Bin Laden themselves, but the government continues to insist there was no collusion.
It's easy to say that the inter-services intelligence or elements within the government were in cahoots with the Al-Qaeda. This is a false hypothesis.
In its own defence, the army says it didn't know who lived here, but did tell the Americans about a call made from the compound in mid-April, asking for finance from Saudi Arabia. The dilemma for Pakistan is what to do with this compound, to open the doors and let the cameras in, or to blow the place up, as some are speculating. There is concern that if it's left standing, it could become a kind of monument to Osama Bin Laden and perhaps a propaganda tool. It is already a local tourist attraction. It's now a place for a family day out, much photographed and much debated. But many locals don't believe this was home to the world's most wanted. These schoolboys came to decide for themselves.
I think it is true, because house is very much big, security gates, many things. But
So you believe Osama was here?
yes,
A lot more information could come from survivors of the raid who are in Pakistani hands. Senior security sources here say America wants to question all of them, but Pakistan hasn't made up its mind. Orla Guerin, BBC News at Bin Laden's compound.
Well, we'll wrap up this half hour of The Hub here on BBC World News, where we started it really, but not in Pakistan. The consequences of what's been happening in Pakistan at Ground Zero in New York City. There, an aerial shot. Orla Guerin there talking about what's happening in Pakistan becoming a monument to Osama Bin Laden. That's a monument in progress to the people who lost their lives on 9/11, September the 11th, 2001. The US President Barack Obama has been there at Ground Zero just in the past, 25 minutes or so, laying a wreath in memory of the 3,000 people who lost their lives, taking a slight step out, perhaps, from the questions that continue to resonate following on from that operation by the Navy SEALs to kill Osama bin Laden in Abbottabad. We'll have the headlines for you in just a few minutes.
As President Obama hails the team that killed Osama bin Laden, Al-Qaeda finally acknowledges the death of its leader. A day of defiance in Syria, thousands demonstrate despite heavy security. Activists say at least 21 people are killed. Welcome to BBC News. I'm Adnan Nawaz. President Obama has met the military team that killed Osama bin Laden and praised their mission as one of the greatest military operations in our nation's history. Meanwhile, Al-Qaeda has apparently given its first response to Monday's killing of bin Laden. A statement posted on militant websites acknowledged he was dead. It went on to threaten the United States with retaliation. From Washington, Steve Kingston reports.
The White House has tried to limit the fanfare surrounding the killing of Osama bin Laden.
Hello, Fort Campbell!
But before an audience of pumped-up soldiers, this was a testosterone moment.
Thanks to the incredible skill and courage of countless individuals, intelligence, military, over many years, the terrorist leader who struck our nation on 9/11 will never threaten America again.
The president was speaking after a private meeting with the entire assault team of Navy SEALs and helicopter pilots who'd carried out the historic raid.
It was a chance for me to say on behalf of all Americans and people around the world, job well done. Job well done.
But there is much more to be done if America is to defeat al-Qaeda and its Taliban allies in Afghanistan, where these US troops were on cautious patrol this week. For even as the president prepares to order home the first American soldiers, the Taliban have threatened a new impetus to their fight. For its part, the CIA is attempting to unlock a treasure trove of intelligence seized from Bin Laden's Pakistani compound. The US Special Forces came away with computer hard drives and memory sticks. First analysis suggests al-Qaeda was considering an attack on the US rail network, but officials say there's no evidence of a detailed plan involving named targets. This early intelligence suggests that Osama Bin Laden remained at the heart of al-Qaeda decision-making, that he was more than the figurehead that some have portrayed him as. In a statement, al-Qaeda has acknowledged the killing of its leader and vowed revenge. Steve Kingston, BBC News, Washington.